In this video, I'm going to talk a little bit about the donor motor for this build. It's a 5.3 out of a 2001 Chevy Silverado pickup. I chose this size LS motor because it should generate enough horsepower without creating too much heat. Okay, we got the engine all stripped down and checking the parts out. Already got the block all cleaned up and inspected. It looks really good. I don't think it's got as many miles on it as they thought it did, but I don't know. It looks really good. Still has some crosshatch in the cylinders. And overall, this looks really good for a donor motor for this. So the next thing is paint it and get it back together. Okay, we got the block all ready to go. It's all clean, prepped, masked off. Gonna hit with some self-etching primer now before we do the paint. Okay, it's all primered and ready to go. So now to put the top coat on it, Victory Red. Okay, second coat should be good. Now that it's all cleaned up and painted, now it's time to get it put back together. When we were doing the initial inspection of the motor, we noticed that there was one of the exhaust manifold studs had broken off, or bolts had broken off, and my nephew Greg, who is putting the motor together, had this special tool for fixing it. So this is a little part here where he's actually drilling out the old bolt and getting it ready for a new bolt to go in. Excited for this project today, because today we had a whole box full of goodies show up from Holley. Okay, we got everything unboxed out of there, and we've got everything laid out here on the table. We've got all the components so it's easy to find. Got a belt, Got the tensioning pulley, the 150 amp alternator, the AC compressor, the thermostat, and the housing. Various different, got the water pump right there, the pulley for the power steering pump, harmonic balancer, and the all-important main housing that goes on the block. So this is really going to be nice. Let's get to it. Okay, so we've taken the time to already put the water pump in place. We got the thermostat and housing in there, and we got the power steering pump already bolted in place. It's just loosely in here, so we can make some final adjustments. And then, so now we're gonna put it on the front of the block, and when we get ready to do that, we're gonna go ahead and stick these on the back here where the bolts go to kind of hold it in place, and then we'll get it bolted up. When it came to the accessory mounting for the front of the motor, I looked at several different brands and ways we could mount these things on here. And I went with the Holley system for a multitude of reasons. The most important one is the compact size. It sits narrow and it also sits low, which is very important with the Ford control trucks because there's not a lot of room underneath the doghouse. The other thing is that it came with all the accessories as a kit. And although it may be a little bit more expensive than buying things separately, overall it's an entire kit and it works really well. Plus all the parts are readily available pretty much anywhere, which is important to me. If you're out somewhere and something decides to go bad, you've got something you should be able to pick up pretty much anywhere. Okay, got it all together here now. Everything is bolted in. All the components are on there. Got the harmonic balancer all hooked up and torqued down. So all I have to do is to put the belt on. Coming up in the video, you're going to see an intake manifold that we purchased off of Amazon, but we didn't take the time to shoot video on installing it. But it fit real well. It served our purpose. Came with the throttle body on the back. And as you'll see coming up, it fits real well with the fuel lines and the fuel rails, and that was just one of those things we decided to go that route with that intake manifold. Just like that, it's ready to go. Now we're going to use our Aeromovie fittings to plumb up the fuel lines. We've already got our regulator mounted onto the front of the air intake, so we're just going to hook these lines up here for the fuel rails, coming around the other side of the regulator here, and this one around to this side over here. And we got a return line underneath here which will go back to the tank. Okay, we're going to do some here for covering on how to install these ends onto the Aeromotive 6AN fuel line. I know there's a lot of people out there who have done videos on this, but since they're one of our sponsors, I want to kind of go over this anyway. And the first time I ever worked with this stuff, I thought it was kind of tough, but the more I've worked with it, I found it's a lot easier once you start finding some little tricks and stuff. You don't have to have a whole lot of fancy tools, and the big thing is just making sure your connections are clean and the connections fit nice and tight on there. So we're going to put basically this fitting on one end, this fitting on the other end. I'm just going to show how to do one end and how I come up with the measurements and stuff. So on this particular thing, we're trying to hook up the Y on the back of the motor to the fuel rails. So we've got to go from this straight to this, I believe this is a 50-degree elbow. And the simplest way I found to figure for measuring this stuff is to measure between where the top of the nut is on both of these things on where you need to lay it out. And this particular one is going to be 6 inches. And then the difference on what you take off here is because inside here there's a ferrule there's a ferrule right there, and then you have the nut. So when you go to put this on, you're going to lose about 3/8 of an inch here, 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch. So we need 6 inches to the end of the nut, so I deduct either, you can go 3/8 or 1/2 over the total length, so it's either going to be 3/4 of an inch or 1/2 an inch. So I'm going to go about 5/8 of an inch, which I've got marked right here already. And now we're just going to cut this off with the die grinder with a cutoff blade, which I've got right here. This works really good. Some people use a chop saw. I'm just going to use this because it's handy. Most people have one of these in their shop. You know, safety first, safety glasses. And we're just going to cut this off right where I got the pencil mark. Just like that. Now we want to make a nice square cut on this. I got this probably just a little bit crooked, so I can take it over to my belt sander with a disc on there, and I can just touch that up a little bit, and that's how we clean that up. Okay, so we got that cut off. We've got that sanded nice and clean across there. Pull my tape off of here. So we got a pretty nice clean edge there now on both these ends here. Now, I also took and sanded this edge off a little bit here to get that little burr off that on both these ends. And the inside, there's a little bit of burr here. You can use a deburring tool, whether it's a tapered, like a drill bit type. I've just got a regular little sheet metal deburring here, and that does a pretty good job of taking most of all that stuff off the inside of there to clean that up. Okay. Next thing we want to do is we want to put the nut onto here. Now, I happen to have this nice little 11/16 socket, and it's got a little stop in here. It's a plug socket, spark plug socket, and that works really good for clamping that in the vise. And you can take this nut, put it in there, hex end in first, and then I spray just a little bit of lube on the hose just to make it a little bit more slippery, and then push this on here. Get that started in there. And it slips right in there. See, it goes right in. Have it stick out a little bit like that. Now you're ready for the next step. Okay, the next step is we're going to take and cut this outer coating off of here. And all we got to do with that is come back to about the length of the ferrule, which isn't very big. As you can see, it's right about there. And I go a little bit past that. So we're going to come in here, we're making a cut right about here, just go all the way around. You've got the steel braid inside, so you don't have to worry about pushing too hard because it's not really going to hurt that steel braid any. Go all the way around. Make a little slot cut this way. And now, this should just come right off of here, just like that. And we're exposing the metal braid underneath there. And if you're lucky, like this one is, it already kind of pulled back a little bit to make room for the ferrule to go in there. So we're just going to take this ferrule, put the sharp edge down. There's actually a little ridge inside there that the PTFE coating or inner liner there is going to go up against the stop there. I don't know if you can see that or not, but anyway, that's going to slip over the outside of that and right up to that stop. And that's pretty much it right there. Right in like that. This is a kind of flared out, but that's okay. That's going to work just like that. Push it a little better if you want on the side of the vise or the bench. And it's hard to see in there, but that's actually seated right up against there right now. Okay, so the next step, we take and put this in the vise. And not overly tight. We're going to snug that in there, and we're going to push on the ferrule and pull on the hose at the same time. Because what we want to do is get this set back here about 3/16 of an inch behind the front edge of that nut, which is right about there. Not so much that we're going to pull the hose out of it, which is kind of hard to do. Okay, and you probably notice I got tape on the inside of my jaws here to help protect the nut. Okay, next thing we're going to do is we're going to get the fitting started in there. Get that started in there, and just a drop of some light oil just to lube those threads up. And we get that started. Now we're going to take and flip this around and put the fitting itself into the vise and then work on this thing here. So that way we can put a little more pressure on this than we can on this. I don't want to distort this. Okay, we just spin this up. Okay, now that I almost got it tight enough, we're going to turn this around. Now I can put the fitting back in here. And the only reason why I put this in here now like this is because there's a little tiny surface here to be able to grab a hold of in the vise. I don't want that to spin in there. So now we go back to it. In this particular fitting, it's 11/16. We slip over that and the other one, and we just continue running that up now. And just like that. It's all nice and snug on there. Nice and clean. It's ready to go. Okay, we got the little fuel lines here to go between the fuel rail and the regulator. And let's get this thing hooked up. You've probably noticed that the intake manifold is on backwards. Well, it is for normal applications, but an FC truck is not normal, and it's going to work out better to have the air intake from the back of the motor versus the front. There's more room behind it in the cab to run our air intake and such through there. So that's the reason why it appears to be backwards on the motor. Okay, so that's going to look real clean like that. We've got the 150-degree returns right here coming out of a straight, so it makes a curve right around here, makes for a clean installation. Well, there it is all together. And one of the things I really like about this is that Holley accessory system. It sits low and it's tight, which is exactly what I need to fit in this truck. Plus, I didn't have to fabricate a single bracket to make all that work. Be sure to check my other videos in this series on the build of this truck. And thank you for watching.